It is, or it was, a chicken heart.
Chicken heart? Are you crazy, man?
Chicken heart! Yes, chicken heart, I tell you. Chicken heart! Listen to me, you fools! Listen!
A podcast in black and white, brought to you by Chicken Heart Productions, is back. And this week, our discussion is of the 1953 film I Confess. Let's introduce ourselves. I'm John Grisolano.
Joe Mo.
Father Grizz, Mike Grisolano.
Julie Grizz. Mary Mo or Mary Grizz.
Go get him, Chicken Heart. Go get him.
Let's do the obligatory spoiler alert. Please be aware, we are talking about an old movie. That's what we do on this podcast. We talk about old classic movies, old black and white movies, movies that have been around for decades. If you haven't seen it and you don't want to know what's going to happen, turn off now. Otherwise, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about anything and everything we want to talk about. So this week's episode is I Confess. Mike chose this film, so we're going to let him direct the discussion. Mike, why don't you tell us why you picked it and tell us something about it.
You all know I am a priest, newly ordained in May. I heard about the theme, the idea of a priest who something to do with the seal of confession in a movie, and that being an element of drama and intrigue.
For he is sworn to silence. Grim silence that points the finger of suspicion at him.
That's all I knew about this movie, was that a priest was involved, the main character, and something happens in confession where now he's implicated in some sort of crime, but the seal of confession is at stake. And so I was intrigued as a priest to see, well, how are they going to negotiate this in the movie? What's the drama going to be? How does it play out? And that was my motivation. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't even know the actors' names until we decided to cover the movie. The movie jumps right away into, there's not much of a spoiler in a certain sense because the movie lets you know right away what's at stake. I mean, it jumps right in after the opening credits of whatever, 2 minutes.
Well, you see in Hitchcock fashion a body on the floor.
Yeah.
Right.
With a blood stain on the head and a blunt instrument lying on the ground next to him, and a man dressed in priest garb.
With a cassock, walking out of the house,
Wearing a
and then takes the cassock off
With a really cool
in the
hat
alley.
on too, by the way.
Was
So
it a hat or Beretta?
He had a hat.
Oh, a hat. Okay.
Yeah, he had a
fedora.
hat.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. It was a hat.
And his name is Otto Keller.
Keller, that's it. The after that scene, as this man's walking away, dressed as a priest, presumably a priest, from the scene of a crime. The next scene is in the church, and you see the main actor, the character, and it's
Father Michael
dressed in a
Logan.
cassock, which I think is important because this is 1950s, and so it's very distinguishable. Not like the way a priest would be nowadays.
Well,
which
the
is
only thing would be a collar, yeah.
Yeah.
They had more than the collar, the cassock. Just for those who are listening, a cassock is a black, it's not just the black pants of a priest, but actually like a garment.
Like
some
Neo
kind of
in
dress.
the
It's like
Matrix.
Neo, yes. It's this robe-like thing that goes down to your ankles, all in black.
So it's
with
very
buttons up the front.
distinguishable.
With a sash around the midway. So it's very distinguished. Everybody would know, oh, that's what priests wear.
Maybe we should talk about who's the cast.
Well, the cast in there, you have Father Michael William Logan, the lead character, is played by Montgomery Clift.
Then he's the star.
He's the star of the movie. Ann Baxter is in it as well as Ruth Granford. Carl Malden, Inspector LaRue. Brian Ahern as Willie Robertson.
He's fine, yeah.
And those are really the main
That's the
important
main
characters, except for Otto. What's
Otto's
Otto's
fantastic,
actually
Is
good.
O.E. Haas is his name. He's actually big. He was big in Germany. He really didn't do that much in America. He was kind of imported in for this one.
There's some good actors in this.
And as you mentioned, this is a Hitchcock film. This is a Warner Brothers picture, 1953, and it's shot on location in Quebec.
Yes.
Beautiful city. I've never been there, don't know much about it, but boy, it was beautiful in 1950.
Yeah, a lot of, just as another side note, a lot of the cast were real workers and people of the city, the extras and whatnot, so they tried to make it, the goal was to make it as realistic looking
In
as
Quebec City,
possible.
that's where it's at.
That opening scene, very dramatic, and you're intrigued right away. The next scene is you're in church with Father Michael Logan, played by Montgomery Clift. it's dark. It's late at night. He's walking from the sanctuary, presumably from the front of the church toward the back, because he hears something. And it's darkened outside.
But I thought this scene was actually very well
Yes.
done.
It was wonderful.
Very
Shot
wonderfully
fantastic.
looking scene.
He goes from the lit with candles, and he hears a noise in the votive candles by some of the statues and shrines. He grabs one to use.
The rest of the church is dark.
It is dark, yeah. So he's going to the back because he hears a noise, and he says, "Who's there?" Or is there anyone there? And he goes back into the darkness with just his candle, and he comes upon a man kneeling there, and it is
Otto Keller.
Otto Keller, one of the employees, apparently, as you find out. And he's a little beside himself. He's
like the church handyman.
The church handyman, apparently,
Sexton would be
Yes.
the traditional, a church sexton, the caretaker.
and his wife is
His
the
wife
housekeeper of the
works there,
rectory.
too,
yeah.
yeah.
So he and you find out that Father Michael Logan is the one who helped get them. They were immigrants and not treated well. He tried to help them out.
We should point out he's a German
Yeah.
immigrant, and this is
Post-war.
post-war. It's still 8 years after World War II. It would have been significant. There still would have been a lot of anti-German sentiment.
I think he's saying things like, I'm sorry for what you'll hate me, or I've offended you, and you get clearly that Clift, the priest, doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, well, why would I hate you, or how could I don't hate anyone, or I don't. The man's desperately says, I need to confess. I want to go to confession. Father Michael, knowing as a priest, he's going this standard form. When's it been since your last confession? I don't know. I did. He says, well, can you approximate? And so the priest is asking the standard opening questions when somebody doesn't solicit the answers, like, bless me, Father, for I've sinned. It's been a year since my last confession. He doesn't do that. So after this guy just says, well, can you approximate your last confession? The man blurts out, I murdered so-and-so tonight. And you just see the look. This is one of the few moments where Clift actually delivers an expression on his face. It's
Monsieur Villet, right?
the lawyer.
A shady lawyer. Well, you find out later.
Later.
He was a shady lawyer. But they cut to Otto and his wife.
And his wife arguing he's going to tell, and
Right.
all the priests all Otto keeps saying is he's a priest, he can't tell.
But you also find out that it was an accident. That Otto did not intend to murder the lawyer.
With his
He
wife.
just-
There's a scene with his wife.
With his wife. So it's as seamless as though he's telling his wife, he's just finished telling his wife the same thing he tells the priest. And then he says, basically, that he didn't mean to kill.
Right. He wanted to rob from
He
steal.
just wanted to rob him.
Yeah.
$2,000, I think.
It's something you don't know what. I don't think they'd say what the
They don't say
2,000.
why the
He
amount
does
is
say 2,000.
significant.
He says
But why
2,000.
But
Why
what will
the
it do?
two?
Right.
Why the 2,000? I don't
You
know.
Because
don't
they
learn
can
why
start
it's
over. It was
Yeah.
something about that $2,000 was going to be
Well,
them starting over.
So what I also thought significant is, because my understanding has always been, if you want absolution, you have to make appropriate recompense. So you learn one of the things that Father Logan told him was, because Otto says, he told me I have to give the money back.
Yeah.
So you learn, okay, at least that much. And Otto's like, I
That's-
want to
And you
give the
learn
money
in a
back.
later scene
And
he
you'll
has to
learn
turn
later
himself
on
over.
he's supposed to also
Well,
go
those
turn
and
himself
just so
in.
Right.
people know, and I mean, you get the impression at this age in Quebec, everybody was well versed with some of the Catholic understanding. The one about returning the money is the restitution. These are all that's part of the penance. The turning yourself in is not part of the penance; it's a recommendation. You can't, as part of the penance, tell somebody like you won't be forgiven unless you give the money back. But the idea is that that's the judgment the priest advises the murderer or whoever it is to do
Well,
it.
really? Well, that's interesting. We can have that.
I was just sharing that with you.
I was always under the understanding, like, if you were you were supposed to get absolution.
No.
You're supposed
The
to go
absolution,
turn
the
yourself
forgiveness
in.
is there. It's the recommendation. You don't have. It's not part of the penance. You're not. It's not like forgiveness is contingent upon you turning yourself in. That's what the priest will recommend.
Well, he did. Right there, we learn with his wife from Otto that the priest told him, "I've got to give the money back."
Yes, that's
Right.
the rest.
So we know at least that much.
Right. True.
But that's the point. And I'll also add, right there at that scene, I hate to say I figured out the movie, but I
Yeah,
knew
me too.
Yeah.
right there is the biggest chink in the armor. I can see it right there. You can drive a truck through it because you can see immediately the wife is very concerned about this whole thing. Now, naturally she would be, but that made me incredibly suspicious right off the bat. She's going to be the weak link, isn't she? She's going to be the one.
I would go even a step further. It seemed clear from the start Montgomery Clift is going to take the fall for this murder.
Right.
Because that's going to be the tension. Which was okay. I still enjoyed watching it unfold, but I felt like the story, you knew, as you said, you start off
You know
Right,
everything.
yeah.
It's not one of those that you're waiting to build
It
up to the
wasn't
point of
that.
the
You
movie.
know within
No.
5 minutes. And if you
What's
miss those
happening?
5 minutes,
We actually had to
doesn't
stop
make
when they were
sense.
getting tired. We were like, wait, let's re-listen
Yeah.
to that because I got the sense all of the important content is coming out in this
Yeah.
early
It
like,
does.
5
yeah.
minutes.
I think this is why a lot of Hitchcock fans are disappointed or don't like this movie because it's not a suspense
No.
movie.
It
It's
could have
very
been, though, which
direct.
The next day,
And I'm sorry, I only mentioned that because I thought it was important.
the confession
That
itself.
what came out of the confession is
It's
like
revealed,
there's certain
yeah, that
conditions.
the
Yes.
priest told him
The
to
priest
return
said,
the
"You should
money
do these
and that he should
things."
turn himself
Yes,
in. Right.
and Otto has no intention of doing those things.
No. They now live and work where this priest is, and he realizes that the man has no intention. He's portraying it as if he's just going to go back because he works for this lawyer that he killed also to tend his garden every Wednesday. The next day's Wednesday, and his wife
You're
says,
talking
"Where-"
Otto. Is
Otto.
the
His
actor,
his
yeah.
wife says, "Otto, why
He
are
was
you?
wonderful.
He was excellent.
He was the
He was a
best
great
part of
actor.
the movie. Yeah,
I
he
would
was
say
the
Anne
best part
Baxter
of the
though was the
movie.
second. I thought she was.
Yeah, she was good. We'll get to her in a moment too.
Yeah.
Just to advance the story, in the household of the rectory where they're living, Clift is kind of beside himself in a sense, as much as he can express that facially, which we'll get to in a minute. It's clear he's uncomfortable at what's happening. That this man's not, Otto's not turning himself in, and
No.
everybody's trying to pretend like his wife and he that everything's normal. And so now he's sort of carrying this burden, which is very uncomfortable. Right away, he goes over after breakfast seemingly to confirm that this man is dead.
I had an issue with that. I didn't quite understand why he went there.
Maybe he
Clift?
knew that Ann Baxter was there, going to be
No,
there
he had
too.
an appointment.
He has
Yeah,
an
but why
appointment there
does
with
he-
Ann Baxter.
They know, but why
I
does he
don't know why
go
he talks to
inside
the
when he
cops.
already knows he's dead and tell the cops?
That was my issue.
He goes in. It's like he's asking for trouble almost.
Yeah.
I didn't quite understand that. I know you find out he has an appointment with Ann Baxter.
I thought he was gonna do. I actually thought he was gonna do like last rites.
Well,
which is
that
why as a
well,
priest,
does,
he
but
went
does
That
over
guy's been
there.
dead for-
but another thing is, does he know that's who got killed?
Yes.
That's who Otto killed.
Otto told him I killed
By name.
Monsieur
Yeah.
Villet.
Why does he tells the police
That's
can
what I
help?
didn't understand.
He
Why
offers
does he
his
go
help.
in there?
Yeah, he says, "Can I help?"
But then when he says, "Can I help?" He goes in, and that's when we first see Carl Malden. And Carl Malden's the police inspector.
Detective does a wonderful job. Yeah.
And yeah, Carl Malden's very good in this, and playing a straightforward police inspector. Carl Malden is questioning him. Oh, thanks for coming, Father. No, there's nothing you can do. You died, blah blah blah. And he says, what brings you over here, Father? He says, "Oh, I had an appointment." And when I was watching that with Monsieur Villet, and I thought, why did you just say that?
He can't share, or apparently feels he can't share what it's about.
Yeah,
and this
and he
becomes
wants-
the crux later on. And you're like, well,
Just-
what was it about? Oh, personal matter. So
Right.
now he's.
He can't say because he's protecting Ann
I know.
Baxter.
Right.
So that's a dramatic moment. After this little brief encounter, which only mildly piques Carl Malden, the inspector's interest, Montgomery Clift goes out front of the building, and there's a whole crowd still out there. And Ann Baxter, the first time you see her, comes up and says, "Oh, Michael, he tells her what happened, that Villet has
Well,
been
actually,
killed."
all he does is they leave the suspense open for a little longer.
He says Villet
He
is
says-
dead, and she says
We're free.
And then that's it. That's all you see in that scene.
Yeah.
Which is now you're left wondering, free for what? This is an attractive young priest, attractive young woman. How are they free? What is this guy? You're now at this point starting to be suspicious of Father Michael, which no doubt is the meaning behind that little scene, I would assume.
Grim silence that points the finger of suspicion at him.
So you're really wondering what's going on now. Like,
Well, the moment a scene that I really enjoyed is actually right after that. Father Michael's painting the den,
yes.
and Otto comes in and says,
And this is where we learn that the other thing that
This is where you learn
Father
that Father
Logan had said to
Logan-
him was, "You need to
turn yourself in.
Right.
And Otto says, why did you do that? Why did you go there? Why did you talk to the police officer and they let me go? You didn't tell them, did you? And his wife comes in. Otto's wife comes in at one point looking sheepish and terrified and skittish.
Yes.
That's when Otto, in my impression, realizes that Father Michael Logan is not going to tell his secret and that Otto's off the hook.
Yes.
But Otto's looking for comfort still. And Father Michael says, "I already told you to turn yourself in. Have you done that?
Yeah.
Then I don't have anything else to tell you."
Otto wants other options than the obvious. He wants to get away with this crime and get it blessed by the priest. And he basically says, "I've told you everything I can or what I need to tell you."
Right.
So he leaves it at that.
And I enjoyed every scene that Otto was in, which is
Yes.
why I enjoyed.
And there was a
Except
great
the final
tension.
scene maybe wasn't his, but anyway, we'll get to that. That was okay.
Yeah, I mean, there was a great tension between Otto and his wife who is completely disbelieving of the Seal of Confession, which is sort of like another character. And so you're always left somewhat suspensefully, from Otto's point of view, is Montgomery Clift going to reveal the secret? Because there's a seed of doubt in him, planted there basically from his wife, who is so incredibly doubtful that this is going to happen. Which goes back to, and I don't know if we're at this point yet in the discussion, the greatest problem that the film has is, well, two is, one, it veers too much from the play. The original play, the script was fantastic. The play was great. If they stuck to the play, it would be everything that I think a Hitchcock lover would want. Super suspenseful. There's this great intrigue in the real play where the priest actually has an illegitimate kid with Anne Baxter. So basically you have this horrible problem, is that this extra character, which is the Seal of Confession, is never really explained.
Yeah, I see one of the biggest bummers of this is that at no point does any of these people, they're all seemingly Catholic and intelligent, they're all really smart, the detective, and you're wondering, why is nobody ever mentioned, like, this priest is... Montgomery Clift, it's revealed, he's a war hero. Like, this man has sacrificed a lot. He's actually a good man and seemingly a good priest. The idea that nobody said, boy, why is this guy, all of a sudden, when I ask him questions about this time period or this moment, he's coy and skittish. Like, that nobody could ever come to the...
He has two secrets at the beginning of the movie. And I think that's why he seems so suspicious. His first secret is that he and Anne Baxter had been presumably childhood lovers, basically.
Yeah.
Yes.
He goes off to war, she marries another man.
But she's still in love with him.
Father Logan, before he's Father Logan, so just Michael Logan, comes back. Michael Logan doesn't realize that her character is married.
So they go off on a nice day on the island somewhere.
Date, and it starts to rain, and they spend the night in a gazebo and get found out
by Monsieur Villet.
By Mr. Villet.
Yes, this is
now
the
dead.
crux of the blackmail.
And she's married to a very powerful man.
Politician of some type.
Yeah, powerful politician, lawyer. Something.
Pierre.
And
Who's an extremely uxorious, doting husband who he puts up with Anne Baxter and clearly
And he totally
doesn't
loves her.
mind the fact that she's in love
I
with
don't love you,
him.
I've never loved you, I've
And
always
he
loved
still
you.
stays with her. Yeah.
Right.
Two favorite characters in this were Otto and Anne Baxter's character, even though Anne Baxter tends to get a little hammy. But I thought that was one of the most acidic put downs that a man could hear, to have your wife say to you, I've never loved you, always loved him. And just, God, that would burn.
It's just on a point that this is a weakling. They spend an innocent night trapped by a storm under a gazebo. When I say innocent, they don't do anything. Father Logan and Anne Baxter.
He's not Father Logan.
I was under the assumption they did do something.
You're in love with me. You've always been in love with me. You haven't changed.
No, it's clear they
She
didn't.
wakes up
Michael,
with his
he's not
jacket
Father.
on,
This is you should set up the what happens.
Yeah, go Chicken Heart. Go get him.
He comes back from the war.
Yeah. Right.
Literally, it's like the next day, and they
She
spend
greeted
the
him
day
at the
together.
train, right?
And she doesn't have a ring on, and he does not know that she's married.
Exactly.
So they spend the day together just like they would have years
It's
ago
like
before the
they
war.
go off to the
They
country,
go off,
spend
they
the
have
day
fun,
together.
They have wine, they have
Do you know what
cheese.
that reminded me of? Was the scene in The Quiet Man where Mary Kate and
Sean Thornton.
Sean Thornton spend the afternoon together and get caught in a storm.
Yes,
Because
very
interestingly, I think those movies were made the same year.
In the actual play, which makes more sense. And the reason this is dramatic is that this is used as what this guy Villet uses as a blackmail, like a threat against them
Right,
both.
that they fell
Once he's a
asleep in the
priest.
gazebo.
And when in hindsight, I look back and I thought, that's just ridiculous. It's just an accident. He even says in the courtroom, they said, why didn't you talk about this? He said, I didn't think I did anything wrong. Father Logan says that under oath. Well, I didn't think we did anything wrong. Because they
I
didn't.
think we should explain to them. They're in so they have to spend the night in this gazebo because it's raining so hard. And in the morning, she's on one bench and he's sitting in his chair, giving her his coat. It's all innocent. It's all PG rated. But Villet comes in, and the sheer fact that she's a married woman and he's a single man, and that they were alone together overnight would have been
And
scandalous. He's not yet Father Michael.
Okay, Michael.
At that time, it's the fact that she's married. Just the fact that they don't show you, they just show them waking up in the same space. At this time, in a 1950-something movie,
Wake up,
doesn't
little Susie.
doesn't
Wake
mean
up. Remember
that
that
nothing
song?
happens.
The 60s.
Now, I agree with you. You're right. This is one of my critiques in the movie as well. Michael Logan is a man of cast iron character. They don't make many guys like this. This guy is a potbelly stove of a man. I mean, nothing dents him. You believe he didn't do a thing.
I guess part of the point is that his character isn't actually like that in the play. He actually does sleep with her,
not, but in
and
the
that's why
movie-
it's actually a little bit more of a blackmail threat. I remember feeling like this is all the drama. Oh, we're free, Michael. Free from what? From a guy who says I saw you fall asleep under my gazebo? I mean, come on. I felt like, I mean, I know it's the 50s, but my goodness, this is really not that dramatic. And even under oath, even says we didn't do anything wrong. The priest says. So I was like, this was not a very motivating.
So I think that was also kind of illegal at that point, wasn't it? Because isn't that what Frank Sinatra was arrested for? Was messing around with a married lady?
Yeah, you could. I mean, you would go to jail for sodomy. You would go to jail for. Yeah, you couldn't be. Yeah, if you were with a married woman, it was.
You would go to jail for that at that point.
It's, I suppose, if the husband made an issue of it.
If the husband made an issue, yeah.
Because that's what that famous Frank Sinatra mugshot. That's what he was arrested for.
So there's a bit more.
Holding another man's. Yeah.
But this big and perhaps a little bit ridiculous secret is what gets revealed. Anne Baxter's character reveals it to Carl Malden, which is what makes Carl Malden pretty convinced that Father Michael is the Clifton Wet. Montgomery Clift is the murderer.
Right.
Which I always thought was a bit much, was that Carl Malden was like hell bent from the first scene. See, I disagree. I think that Carl Malden, they did that really great shot of Carl Malden's face. Again, the cinematography and like the different like camera angles I thought were really good. And they have a close up of Carl Malden's like side profile of his face. And then you see Anne Baxter and Montgomery Clift outside with like the blinds, through the blinds.
Yes.
And he's looking at them, and you can see that it's instantaneous. Like it's like he's a little dog on like on the hunt. Like that's it. That's who he thinks it's gonna be, and he is relentless. And when the prosecutor, who's played by Brian Ahern, keeps trying to say like this is ridiculous, he's not the murderer. Like I don't buy into it. Like even after Anne Baxter is forced to go in and give a confession, basically, and has to reveal all of these horrible things about how she never loved her husband, how her and Michael had been in love, and how they were out there in the gazebo and she was being blackmailed. Even after all that, like nothing is going to sway this guy. Like he was hell-bent on thinking it was Father Michael Logan, which I wondered, I thought that was an undeveloped part of the story that I didn't understand.
There's a piece of evidence also, though, which is that two young girls saw the priest leave the house.
A priest.
Saw a priest, a man dressed as a priest, leave the house. So there
circumstantially the bloody cassocks in his
trunk.
The bloody
cassock, in the trial. So ultimately, Carl Malden arrests him for murder.
And that's the important part for people to know. Like Otto stashes the bloody.
Yeah, if we're going to talk about that, that's another one of my critiques. Is Otto gets progressively more evil as the movie goes on. It's delightful. Excuse me. It's fun to watch.
I think he gets more paranoid.
But he gets. It's not that he tries to frame
Yes.
the priest. He almost reminded me of the devil character in plays. Like, he gets in his face all the time. Like, remember, Father, you can't say anything.
Yes, that was really. Oh my gosh! When he's walking down the hallway with the priest, and he's in his face like a devil.
Taunting him.
He's like, "You're not afraid? Are you afraid? Are you afraid to die? Are you?" He's asking him, and it's really creepy when he does it.
This is a guy who literally the day before, 2 days before, was terrified at the point of the gallows, and now he's like getting in his face and rubbing his nose in it.
But this is why you have to take it from the play perspective of being written in 1905 from a French person who was a Catholic. This is actually a great story of philosophy and theology. And what you're actually seeing is the rubrics of a Catholic theological treatise in a way, I think, and that you're seeing evil manifesting itself and the progression of evil. So you see somebody who did a great crime, and you're seeing his gradual sort of descent into even further and further and further evil, which is something that Hitchcock used to often deal with in some of his films, was that like if somebody's bad, like in Psycho, they're going to eventually keep getting worse and worse. Like there's going to be a point where, and maybe they can redeem themselves. But what you're seeing is literally a character who has a huge crime, and at no point are they repentant. They are going to keep furthering along the path.
Okay, because even the opening scene where he doesn't want to do anything, the priest. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But my issue with that is, and I maybe we're jumping ahead to the end, is he becomes, in my opinion, absurd. By the end, he'd become the quintessential evil German. I was waiting for a speech about the master race and how I am a German and I will kill who I wish. Audiences would have been trained to expect the German is, of course, he's got
Oh,
for
that's good
goodness sake, he's got a
Luger,
Luger.
right.
Oh my goodness, evil German. This is so ham-handed.
So the framing part I thought was the part where, have we gotten to the point yet? Do we want to
No,
reveal
I
about
think we
the
can
wife?
get there very quickly. So
Okay.
very quickly what ends up happening is that Montgomery Clift gets arrested for the murder, and he stands a very public trial. And all of the evidence that the whole film has been revealing is now revealed in a court case. The jury, in my opinion, inexplicably, finds him innocent. He's found innocent. As Father Michael is leaving the courtroom, the townspeople are just manhandling him violently.
Yeah.
You've got an ugly scene.
That's a great scene.
And
It's a great scene.
and you see throughout the courtroom, which is a good 5 or 10 minutes, Otto's wife for the first time, she says nothing, but she's realizing that the priest really truly is not going to say what he heard in confession, and really truly may take the fall for the crime.
And
that
Otto
he's
is
commit.
deliciously
And
lying
Otto's
under oath.
lovingly
And,
delighted.
oh
Yes,
my
and he goes
God.
so
Such
yeah,
a good job.
Yeah, so
He's
he
so
frames the
great.
priest, he perjures himself, and then he's going to go another step further, which you're
And
reaching
the other
the
step further
climax
is
of
that
the film.
yes, so as the priest is leaving, it's more guilt than the poor wife can handle. Runs up, no, he's
Into the
innocent.
crowd. The crowd is
Into the
manhandling the
Into the crowd.
And there's a cop or two trying to get him to the
He's
car. or whatever.
innocent, and she turns and points and says, "My husband." Before she can finish, the Luger comes out from Otto's jacket, and he shoots her. That
Great aim too in the crowd.
perfectly
You know,
shoots her, and she dies almost instantly.
Well, no, she gets to
She
have
gets
the
to say
few
a
moments
confession.
of "I'm sorry"
Yeah.
and
Where
"Forgive
it
me."
gets
Right?
ridiculous for Otto, because even that I liked that he's become so warped that
I
he
agree.
kills his wife. Where it becomes ridiculous for me is that and then Otto makes a break for it, runs to a local hotel, and goes on a
Kills a chef.
Shoots a
shooting
chef.
spree up in a packed kitchen. Arbitrarily shoots somebody there.
Which you don't see, you just hear about.
Right, and you see the man.
You hear the
see
But
him
you
die.
get this cornered this scene of a
Cornered animal.
he's a cornered animal. He's being hunted by the police. Finally, dim-witted Carl Malden sort of figures it out at the hotel. Even as Alma, the wife, is lying there dying on the running board of the car, he's still like, "What? Huh?
Come with
What?
me.
Yeah, you know something, Father." Yeah,
I'm a priest.
The chicken heart was kept alive in a laboratory in a vat.
Finally, corner Otto at the hotel. This was another one where I thought, again, Father Michael, man of iron. What does he do?
Father Michael says, "Let me go in there and speak to the armed, angry German."
He's
Let
been
me go-
shooting at them. He's shooting at.
enough. Let me go in there and speak to him.
And
Carl Malden
a
says
great film shot, like
a
a
beautiful film.
film. I mean, just him across
The
the,
long
auditorium,
shot
the
of
long
him,
shot
yeah.
of him across the auditorium. was really-
Carl Malden, this was a humorous moment because as though for the first time the revelation, and Otto, and he looks at the priest quizzically
What
and
about
says,
Villet?
"Tell us about Villet." And
Yeah.
then that's when Otto says, "Oh, so the priest talked. He told what I told him in confession." And conveniently, and Baxter and the priest
And,
from his
and,
rectory.
and Father
His
Logan's
pastor,
pastor
yeah.
is
Yeah.
there. So
All
everybody
make
gets
it
to hear the
his-
story.
And you
his
were there,
confession.
And you were there, and you
were there.
It's true that Father Michael takes his heroic walk into the gymnasium ballroom,
It
whatever.
was a
It's a
Um,
theater.
There's a stage
It's a
there.
curtain. It's a stage.
Yeah.
He's on
Yeah.
the stage.
Then he takes the long walk towards Otto, who's
slightly maniacal, obviously,
maniacal,
at this point.
and tries to shoot the priest. But
Well, he tries to. He tries to talk him down. Father Michael tries to
gonna
talk
him
Otto
down,
down.
yeah.
He even says his name, Otto. And frankly, I have to again admire him because he's like, "What happened to my Alma? What's her name, Alma?"
Yeah.
yeah.
Alma.
He said, "She's dead." You know, like he twice, 2 or 3 times. He says, because Otto's like, "No, it couldn't be. You killed her, Otto." Like he just says it right to him, but not in a mean way. But you're like, "Wow, this guy's." He's gutsy, and first you think he said, "They hate you now. I would be doing you a favor
He
if
does
I
say that,
killed
yeah.
you."
Yeah.
And so you think he's going to leave the priest alive to suffer some miserable hatred from the people, but then at some point he decides, "Nope, I'll just." And he goes to pull his gun and kill him. Of course, the cops kill Otto, and just like with Alma, as she's dying, his pastor gives her absolution. In this case, he says to the priest at the end, after all he's done, he looks up at him and says, "Father, forgive me."
no,
Doesn't he say
interestingly
it?
enough, I
What does he
actually
say?
thought he doesn't finish.
He says
for and dies.
And dies.
And I actually interpreted that as, he doesn't get absolution.
No, he gives him
He's not.
absolution.
He does say, "Ego te absolvo."
I absolve you of your
Yeah.
Father Logan does.
And then it ends with happy music. Remember?
Yeah.
Right from that, it cuts to the end. Dun, 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 dun. And you're just like, wow, that's kind of weird.
The chicken heart grew.
Mike, it was your movie. I want to let you go first. So talk about what you thought of this.
One thing that because we went quickly through that, was I just wanted to make a comment about the court scene that I liked, is that Father Michael's character, at least in his dialogue and everything, I wanted to see how he would negotiate the questions about what happened that night with the confession. And he basically handled it exactly the way that seemed to me prudent enough, where he would always say, I saw somewhere. He would say what he did, but anything that happened, he said, what about the rest of this testimony? He would just say, it didn't happen like that, or I can't, that's all I can say. He never compromised the situation, or even mentioning that he heard this man's confession, because it would implicate him then. So I thought that was done well. My review in general, though, is that I didn't like it as much. I think the movie could have been much better. The blackmail itself was ridiculous. It didn't really add any real help for the story. The seal of confession that somebody could have had an inkling that something, like if Carl Malden, who's otherwise a very intelligent, shrewd man, kind of picked up that there's something else going on in this case that he hadn't. And it was sort of disappointing that comes out in that last scene in the way it does. It's sort of like, oh, that's it? The other big complaint I have is that of all the actors to choose for the part of Father Michael Logan, they pick an actor who can deliver almost no expression through his face. No, I mean, there was a scene where Otto says to him, "You're afraid, aren't you, Father? You're going to talk." And when they show Michael Logan's face, his eyes are dead and hollow. In the review, Ann Baxter said, "I would deliver emotional lines waiting for something from him, and he just looks like he stared blankly back. Like he's literally like a blank stare, not a frightened stare, not an angry, just a blank stare." And you're like, gosh, this is just the part that needs that you can't say so many words that you'd like. If he could have been more expressive in his tones and in his face. So other than those points, the storyline itself, there was a lot of positive to it, a lot of good acting, but I really thought, oh, this could have been, it wouldn't have taken much to make this a much more powerfully done. But I would only give it about 2.5 stars out of 4.
Is it a watch?
Absolutely, watch it once and you take this feedback and consider it for yourself. I would say it's worth watching once. Some of the characters, like that Otto character, I thought was intriguing, Carl Malden, but the story in general could have been done better.
I mean, I couldn't agree more.
Julie's dying. Go ahead, Julie.
I think, and this is just what I feel about all films, is that the basis of a film has to be a good script. And you can have great cinematography, which is what this was. I mean, you had some of the most fantastic lighting and shot scenes in the beginning where they're at the church. I mean, literally to the point where it's like, it sticks with you. Even a few of the scenes where Otto is sitting there with Father Michael and the way the candles lit and just the shadows. You can have great acting like Ann Baxter. Carl Malden was good. Otto was fantastic. Montgomery Clift was wooden, but he is sort of like John said, the man of steel, the man of iron, so maybe you're expecting that. But when you have a weak script, it can actually ruin the film. And I think you should see this film, if only to see a missed opportunity of how you could have had a brilliant, fantastic film that because it was piss poor written, and or the play was supposed to be great. I mean, in the actual play, they have it where it's much more dramatic. It's much more epic. It deals with the idea of the seal of confession being like an extra character. So everyone understands the importance and the gravity of what is going on. So this is almost like another character in this storyline that is the central focus and the crux of it all. And in the end, Father Michael is so willing to stick to the seal of confession in the play that he actually gets murdered. He gets executed for it. And it's only after he does his whole Man of Steel, I am strong, I will die by my beliefs, that then the townspeople realize, oh my gosh, it was the seal of confession. That's why he's dead. Somebody else is the actual murderer. So it's really I hate to call it a morality tale, but it's definitely a tale of one man's belief in something super profound that he's willing to actually die by it. You lose and you gut all of that in the actual movie, which is actually why Montgomery Clift and Hitchcock said that they signed on, was because of the actual play. And they were very disappointed by a lot of the changes that were made to the film. So you have an actual great rubric of a story that gets gutted and it's left as like a half-empty shell, and now you've got a film that's shot well, some good acting, but it's not as profound or as compelling. And so I would give it 2 stars, and to see only if you knew the backstory that there was actually a really good play that was written for it, and to see what a missed opportunity a potentially fantastic story could have, but that it didn't have because they gutted the actual script, which is, I say, the basis of any good film.
I think if you're not Catholic, this storyline is very silly. So I would say it's a must-see if you're Catholic. If you're not Catholic, that's actually what my understanding is of the reviews at the time, was that people just didn't understand why the priest just didn't say what he heard in confession. Because the idea of the seal of confession means nothing to people who aren't Catholic. So I would just say that Catholics might enjoy it, other people will just think it's ridiculous. And for the most part, I thought it was fun. Honestly, I mean, I don't think I enjoyed it just fine. I liked Karl Malden. I think he's a fantastic actor. And even if he played a sort of misguided detective who stubbornly has a notion that Montgomery Clift is the murderer, despite the fact that he's not, I appreciated, I think he had a wry sense of humor. I really enjoyed his facial expressions. I thought he really added a lot. I think Otto's performance, as Mike was saying, is definitely worth checking out. He's a fantastic, progressively more and more evil, but it's definitely not a film, unlike many Hitchcock films, that you would take seriously. I mean, it's if you like Hitchcock, it's worth seeing one of his misses, but I enjoyed it. I didn't feel like it's 2 hours of my life I can't get back.
I agree about the cinematography. I think of the 3 films we've reviewed so far, this one was the best looking. The cinematography in this was the most important and the best. I especially liked the opening scene at the church with the contrast between the light and the darkness. I love that in black and white films when that's done well. It looks gorgeous. Anne Baxter was radiant. I thought she was absolutely beautiful in this. Agree. I like Karl Malden. I thought the German villain Haas was good. I only throw this out as a comment because I hear this often accredited to Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns of these tight facial close-ups. And isn't that brilliant and groundbreaking? And I have to say, this film had an abundance of tight facial close-ups where you get these expressions, especially from the villainous character. That's the good stuff. Didn't mind Clift too much either. I mean, he wasn't great, but I didn't mind him.
No.
I thought the biggest limitation was just some of the dialogue he was given, which was not much.
Right.
He actually doesn't say much in this movie. But my critiques, and I've already given them throughout, were the villain became sort of what I view as the sort of stereotypical. In that era, it was... By the 50s, it's changing, but definitely movies in the 40s through the early 50s, you're stereotypical evil German. Like, if it's a modern movie and you have an American cast with an English actor, you know who the villain is. It's the Englishman. Now it's the English people are the standard villains. In a lot of modern movies, you pick frequently a well-spoken Englishman.
Unless it's a British movie, then it's the American.
Or if it's a British movie. Yeah, but if it's an American movie with a bunch of American, and all right, yep, the European is the villain. At that time, it was okay, the German is the villain. So he gets progressively more villainous, and I thought it was kind of silly. And it's very direct, very blunt. It's a sledgehammer throughout. There's no subtlety. There's no MacGuffin anybody's chasing. There's no suspense. You know the whole thing, and you're just watching how it plays out, which isn't necessarily bad. But if it's not inherently interesting, or there's something compelling to watch, it's just kind of heavy-handed. I somewhat say about Father Michael about being cast iron character is something of a criticism too. I mean, this guy is upper 1% of humanity here. I mean, this guy doesn't break. Obviously, he's a war hero.
He doesn't even break a sweat.
They do show at the one point when he's going to get arrested that he thinks about flight, but of course you know he's not going to do it. And he never even cracks at all, never shows any signs of cracking. Even to the point where it said at the end, it was almost like your Western. I'll go out and I'll meet Geronimo single-handed and walk out and face down the enemy. Goodness, is there anything this guy doesn't do? He probably cooks, too. They have a housekeeper for that, but he could if he had to.
If he had to, yes.
It's worth a watch, either if you're a Hitchcock fan or if you like courtroom drama. It's not terrible. I would give it 2 stars. It's nothing I would necessarily need to watch again.
As an aside, he's supposed to be a method actor. What animal was he? All method actors take on an animal when they act. So, like, Dustin Hoffman's taking on a crab, like... Robert De Niro took on a squid or something in Taxi Driver.
I think that changes from movie to movie.
Oh, okay. So they're supposed to take on an animal form so that it shapes their movement as a method actor. So I was just wondering if, like, Montgomery
He was
Clift
pretty
actually...
stiff.
He was pretty
whatever
similar.
it was.
What animal he took on
It's
is
more like a tree.
I've never heard that.
Yeah.
Joe, what did you think?
It took me 3 days to make it through the movie. It did. I really didn't care. Really didn't. And I know it was pretty to look at, but there's a million other pretty movies to look at. Like, if I was going to pick a movie, like, it's not really good, but it's really pretty to watch, it's not that pretty. I actually found myself, I had got a lot of enjoyment out of imagining what other actors would do with the part. Like, I wanted the part of Otto to be Peter Lorre. What if, like, Edward G. Robinson was the Carl Malden character?
Yes,
you know, like,
yes,
I started doing that kind of.
Who would you pick for the Father Michael?
Who's
Logan?
Father Michael?
I would leave him exactly the same just for comedic purposes. So, like, everybody else around him is funny and he's trying to play it straight. Mm-hmm. And I'm not really a big fan of the method actors anyway.
Yeah.
I was when I was younger. Like, oh, look at Brandon. Oh, look at it. Like, whatever, dude. I didn't really care for it much. As being the only non-Catholic in this podcast right now, it's kind of like, I'm glad I had a bunch of Catholics explain to me how important it was for him not to reveal the thing, because I was like, dude, that's just stupid.
Yeah, right.
Because it was poorly written.
It was poorly written.
That's why you didn't know that.
What about the non-dramatic blackmail? Did you find that too? Just sort of like, oh, why on earth?
It was one of those, just like, the husband knows.
Yeah.
He flat out knows. The priest is a priest. It happened before he was a priest. Who cares?
Right, yeah, there was a lot of that.
The person who might get hurt is okay. Politically, maybe her husband might get hurt, some politically, but they showed him in a scene earlier in the Parliament floor talking, and he's not a pushover there, which is what makes it so funny that he's a pushover at home. But when he was there, like, he was fighting for women to
not get paid.
No, he was fighting for them to get paid equal.
Yeah.
It was he was fighting for equal pay for women, while the other side was arguing. It was one of those, like, this is how great this guy is. He was fighting for women's right in 1953.
What would you give it? How many stars?
1.
1 star.
Wow.
And it's a generous 1. Like I said, it took me 3 days to go through it. I mean, it was predictable. The courtroom scene was ridiculous.
Courtroom scene wasn't long enough either. I would have enjoyed more courtroom.
Well, because they made Hitchcock change the ending.
Right.
Yes.
So he did what I would do: shorten it or change the whole movie.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you do, right? Because the ending originally was, like he said, the priest is supposed to get killed, executed, and all this. Well, how much more of a court scene that's written for a priest to be proven guilty are you going to show before he's proven not guilty?
Yeah, good point.
Like, what do you do with that? I mean,
yeah.
And it's a script. I'm surprised at how bad the script is, considering they worked on it for 12 years.
The beginning of the movie definitely, for me, piqued my interest, and I thought,
It hooks you.
This is
It
kind
hooks
of
you.
cool. And so you're kind of it's one of those movies where you're thinking, oh, this is going to be great, there's going to be a great payoff, and in fact you're left with that, oh, that wasn't,
Yeah.
So, yeah, this isn't one that you'll watch repeatedly.
And what's the deal with the priest and his bicycle that keeps falling all over the place?
It's comedic relief, apparently. That's
It wasn't
what's
funny. I don't know what the deal was with it.
Just comic relief. In one scene, he's just a nice kind of dopey priest who's one of the other priests living in the rectory. He's got a bike that he puts in the hallway, and it always kind of falls over and makes a noise, and it's a kind of running joke. And in one scene, he says to the pastor and the housekeeper, "Oh, tell Otto the front tire looks like it needs air." On the way out, he sees Otto and says, "The front tire doesn't. I thought it needed to be replaced, it needed air, and it doesn't." And that's used in one scene, right? It's when Otto realizes that Montgomery Clift won't talk, he says something like, "The tire doesn't need any air," or something. I don't know. I mean, he repeats that to his wife.
We need to fill the hour and a half. Let's have a bicycle fall over. If you've run out of Hitchcock and you really need another Hitchcock,
he's in this.
There you go.
That's his.
Yeah.
He's actually the first thing you see in
Yes.
it.
I tell you that mass of flesh was a chicken heart.
That ends our review for I Confess. Next time, Mary's picking.
And I want to combine my love of witty dialogue, Cary Grant, and strong female lead in watching His Girl Friday.
So join us next time for His Girl Friday.
tried to warn them. But now it is too late. The heart is free.